So here's the one and only plane that I was actually looking forward to this update, the F-104S-ASA. It's got two big things over the F-104S, well, I guess 3 or 4 big things over the F-104S, but we're going to get to that in a second because I can only cover 2 of the things over the F-104S, and that's the AIM-9Ls and the flares. Let's talk about the AIM-9Ls real quick because that's the main attraction of this plane, in my opinion, is the introduction of these all-aspect AIM-9s, and they're really underwhelming. A lot of you probably have already heard my opinion on the AIM-9L by now. It's not a very great missile. It's not bad per se, but it's extremely disappointing, and as far as all aspects go, we only have the R60M to compare to it. It's pretty much completely inferior. Pretty much the only advantage the 9L has over the R60M is range. Everything else the R60M does better. It tracks better off the rail, which, go figure, it's the R60. It can pull its 30 Gs much quicker than the AIM-9L can, as in like it gets to its 30 G pull quicker than the AIM-9L. But it also just all around tracks better because for whatever reason the AIM-9L Seeker is incredibly glitched or underperforming. I don't even know what to call it. It's just not that great. It randomly misses a lot. You're going to see a couple of misses here that I've included. Targets that it really shouldn't be missing. They're not flying defensively whatsoever. They're even sometimes stalling out mid-air, flying in straight lines, and the AIM-9L is just going to miss. Here we go in F5. He's stalling out pretty much. He's going slow. He's going vertical. He didn't even evade that at all. He pretty much just flew in a straight line upwards, and my AIM-9L misses. This is dev server clip, but nothing about the AIM-9L changed. That's a bot flying in a straight line. The AIM-9L completely misses, and finally, we have this MiG-23 MLA, I believe. He's going to stall himself out here at the top of his loop. The AIM-9L just completely whiffs, and it's very similar to the AIM-9G in that sense. In fact, I would go as far as to say that the AIM-9L is basically an all-aspect AIM-9G. Yeah, it has 30 Gs, whereas the AIM-9G has 18. But I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really not feeling that 30G pull too often, and I'm not seeing any kind of incredible 30G maneuvering that, say, the Magic or the R60 does. Not only do I see the AIM-9L rarely pull 30 Gs to hit its target, the AIM-9L should be a 40 G missile, so it's already right off the get-go missing 10 Gs of pull, but this is the AIM-9L that they've added into the game. It's what we're probably stuck with. I doubt they're going to change it. I've left them feedback. A lot of people have left them feedback on the underperformance of the AIM-9L, and I don't know if it's being heard or not, but for the time being, that's just what we got. Other than that, we have countermeasures on the ASA over the F-104S, and this is absolutely massive in top tier. If you're flying a plane without countermeasures in top tier, you're probably not going to have a very fun time. I actually despise flying the F-104S in top tier because it's one of the only planes that is going to be fighting consistently at 11.3 without having any countermeasures. So if somebody wants you dead while you're flying the AIM-9 or the F-104S, there's really not much you can do, especially planes that are carrying R60Ms. Yes, you can be fast, you can evade a couple missiles, maybe 1, 2 at most, but after that you're going to have dumped too much energy to evade any more incoming missiles, and if somebody just sticks on your ass, well, you can pretty much just fly in a straight line and try to drag them to teammates, but more often than not, they'll just spam missiles at you, and there's nothing you can do. Having countermeasures completely changes that, and it allows you to be a lot more aggressive than you could be in the F-104S, and that is absolutely massive because passiveness does not win games at top tier. You have to make plays, you have to try to get in and get your hands dirty, but if you don't have countermeasures, that's simply not possible. So I'm going to be pointing out situations that I can take the F-104 ASA into that I'm simply not going to be doing with the F-104S, simply just because it doesn't have countermeasures where the ASA does. And that's mostly just going to come in the form of me turning around, bleeding speed, bleeding off energy, so I can reposition myself, re-engage the fight a lot sooner than I could with an F-104S, because if I get slow, then that's okay. I can still evade incoming missiles with my countermeasures. I can one flare pretty much everything and then just get some speed back up if I have to, which there were a couple examples of in this match. I did a couple of vertical maneuvers that I really couldn't do in an F-104S because I'm risking myself by bleeding the energy in that vertical, and I was also able to turn around a lot sooner, like I said, to re-engage targets. My teammates end up cleaning this guy up, and then the last guy ends up returning to base after I'd crit him, J's out, and that's the end of the game. My typical play style for the F-104S and ASA really, but especially the ASA because I don't really play the S, and I have no intention of playing the S. I like going up to high altitude because, well, it's not that maneuverable anyways, so you're really not losing anything by being up at high altitude where you have low IIS speeds, and it does optimize your speed potential, which is what the F-104 is actually good at. It is the exact same engine and flight performance as the F-104S, I forgot to mention, so it is one of, if not the fastest planes on the deck in the game. It goes like Mach 1.2 on the deck, which is exactly what the MLD can do before ripping. It might be able to go a little bit faster. Let's get into some gameplay though real quick. I might jump in and out of talking about the plane in general terms and talking about the gameplay because there is still some more I want to say. I know a Soyuz coming in, so I'm expecting an R-60M. I'm already flaring. He's not going to be flaring the Vulcan, and if you take a close range head-on with the Vulcan and the R-60M, the Vulcan's going to win every single time because just like every other all-aspect missile and missiles in general, one flare more than enough to flare away something coming in all aspect, and he really shouldn't have been that close to me if he actually wanted to do that. That is one of the few missile launches right there that I've actually noticed the 30G pull of the AIM-9L. The AIM-9G probably couldn't have made that shot, but other than that, for the most part, the AIM-9L has felt like an AIM-9G to me, and that includes having a very glitchy and obnoxious seeker. Sometimes the AIM-9G, you'll lock it onto a target, and then 1 second later, it just randomly unlocks itself for no good reason, and then you've got to relock. Other times, you'll lock up a target, and then the seeker will just glitch onto some random spot in the sky or the ground, and be locked onto that. And then right as you launch the missile, it's dead off of the rail because it wasn't actually locked onto the plane. I know those targets aren't flaring when that happens. Obviously, that J-70 flared, so that's why it locked onto the sky in that particular spot. But for those of you with a lot of top-tier experience, probably have shared a similar situation to what I'm talking about. And it happens with pretty much all of the missile seekers in the game, but I noticed that the AIM-9G is particularly finicky and glitchy, and the AIM-9L is no exception. I really could have aimed better in that head-on with the Mirage F1, but we do manage a crit into his wing. We're not going to get a chance to finish him off until a long time later in the game because we have a Bis-Sayu and the J-70E. The Bis-Sayu seems to be really intent on killing me. I do have a teammate behind him though, so that should give me a little bit of time. The Bis-Sayu breaks off, which allows me to turn around and re-engage this J-70E. The all aspect kind of coming in handy, but he ends up turning around to rear aspect anyways, and just like every other missile, he's going to flare away that AIM-9L with no issue. So maybe by this point, with me dogging on the AIM-9L, a couple of you are out there saying, well, why don't you use the Aspides? I hope I'm saying that right. Some guy corrected me in the comments the last time I pronounced it, so I hope Aspide is the right pronunciation because that's what I'm going to be saying the rest of the video. Somebody might be saying, well, why don't you use the semi-active radar homing Aspide missiles? And that's simply because they work, but the radar doesn't. So if the radar doesn't work, then the radar missiles aren't going to work. And what's wrong with the radar, and it's also something wrong with the RWR, which you may have noticed by now, is that when you lock something with the radar, sometimes after you've locked one target, you go to lock the next target, and your I don't even know what to call it, your locking square, the square you see when you're trying to lock somebody, not just in ACM mode, but in all modes, is looking somewhere completely different, and it really in a place that should be impossible. So oftentimes when I'm using, for example, ACM mode, you know that square is going to be right in front of your nose at all times, but after you've locked somebody and unlocked somebody, you go to relock someone else, and that square is for whatever reason 50 degrees down below your nose looking at the ground, and it's really quite unplayable. So that's why I don't use the radar guided missiles. I will revisit those in the future. They seem like they could be good, but at the same time, you may have seen a couple of clips, just the missiles in general aren't reliable in top tier. And if somebody sees them coming, they have the knowledge to evade them, which comes in the form of a single key, then you're just not going to get missile kills. And especially only carrying 4 missiles and no gun, it's not a very viable loadout in my opinion. So even if the Aspide missiles do end up being able to work from a fixed radar, then I'm probably not going to take them anyways, because not having a gun in top tier is a huge problem in my opinion. The other bug on the ASA is the RWR. You may have noticed by now, but the RWR only shows a lock from the front of your plane, so you're always getting locked from the 12 o'clock position according to your RWR, whether that's true or not. Somebody might be locking you from your left, right, behind. It doesn't matter. The RWR is still going to say you're getting locked from the front, so it can be extremely frustrating to try to defend incoming SAR missiles because you'll really have no idea where they're coming from unless you can actually visually spot them. That bug is a lot more potentially damaging than the radar bug, so I hope that one gets fixed ASAP. The radar bug, very annoying, but like I said, I'm going to be playing with 4 AIM-9Ls in the Vulcan anyways, because not having a gun at top tier, and while only having 4 missiles on top of not having a gun at top tier, is just not a good loadout in my opinion. Some of you I'm sure are going to play it, but it's just not the most competitive way to play the plane, in my opinion, of course. Here we go, another game where I'm going to be a lot more aggressive than I could have been in the F-104S. For example, there's enemies pretty much right next to me, and I am still turning. And that's just because I know I can flare away incoming missiles, and I don't have to rely on the energy that the F-104S relies on to evade from incoming fire. EJ Kai, I think that's who was locking me, but like I said, the RWR is glitched, so I really couldn't tell. I go into a 90-degree notch, I deploy chaff just in case it wasn't pulse Doppler, and now most of our targets are behind us, though thanks to the spotting system, I kind of accidentally flew into a small pocket of enemies there without knowing it, because for some reason spotting planes at 3 kilometers at top tier is a good idea according to Gaijin. I don't know, but we're going to re-engage. Once again, just doing things that the F-104S can't. I'm turning, I'm going Mach 0.8 to 0.9, and that's completely acceptable because, again, I have the countermeasures to get me out of trouble. So I'm just going to be working this little furball here. I'm going to be staying as fast as I can. I obviously don't want to start turn fighting because it is an F-104. After all, it's not good at turning. But I am going to be, getting nose position on different targets a lot more quickly than I otherwise would be if I didn't have countermeasures. And I can't stress that enough. That is the most notable upgrade of the ASA over the F-104S. And it really is a game changer. Is it an 11.3 game changer? No, not in my opinion. And the AIM-9L is not an 11.3 missile in my opinion. To me, the only missile in the game that should only be 11.3 is the R-60M. I know it's on a lot of jets. It's mostly on jets that are 11.0, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't think that the jets should be 11.3. It's just that the missile should be 11.3, which comes down to a compression issue. But it is what it is. The ASA, on the other hand, I don't think belongs at 11.3. It should really be 11.0, because the AIM-9L is not really game-breaking by any means at top tier. It's not what we had all hoped for and expected to be added into the game, and as such, it's honestly not even extremely competitive. There's actually quite a big list of normal rear aspect missiles that I would prefer over the AIM-9L. I'm talking about Magics, I'm talking about R-13s, and of course I'd rather have an R-60M over the AIM-9L. And other than the weaponry, it's not a top tier aircraft as in the airframe, because you're not going to be carrying games with the F-104. I really don't think that you're going to be getting that many high kill games, at least I don't. I don't think there's a whole lot of potential to be getting high kill games that are, just complete carry matches. Very few F-104 enjoyers might be able to carry consistently in this plane, but the bottom line is, if you have one person or a group of people trying to kill you and they latch onto your 6, you're going to be defensive the entire time because there's absolutely nothing you can do to switch yourself from the defensive to the offensive without the help of teammates, because the plane, as you know, it's an F-104, it just doesn't maneuver. As such, if you're in a 1 versus situation or any situation where somebody's on your 6, pretty much all you're going to be doing is either running to teammates or pretty much just running in a straight line until you get enough separation or the map border to go ahead and force a head on and then rinse and repeat. You're not going to be dogfighting anything, you're really not going to be pushing offensives against anything that wants you dead, other than if you can manage to get them off you through teammates. Go ahead and switch back into gameplay real quick because this is the final match. F4J, had me locked up. I went into a 90 degree, I chaffed, he switched targets knowing that he just wasn't going to hit me, and then I was able to sneak around behind him, and AIM-9L still has great range just like the AIM-9G. Snuck a missile up from behind him. He didn't know it was coming. I do see this Mirage F1, but I'm just going to kind of ignore him up until this point where I turn into him a little bit. Why did I turn into him a little bit? Just to kind of maximize the amount of turning around he's going to have to do in order to get back and get a missile off at me. It was able to create a little bit more separation. I had a little bit more time to react to that magic coming in, and now I'm pretty much being offensive while being defensive. I'm looking ahead at targets I want to shoot at, but I'm constantly checking my 6 because I know a missile's probably going to be coming after me any second in between me, looking backward and forward, so I have to be ready to be able to flare it away. We do get him an AIM-9L shot on that F4E. I think he was flaring, but I think he also just left his afterburner on, so that hits him anyways. Jink that shot from the incoming F4E, and now I'm going to go try to help my buddy here in the F-104. I spool up an AIM-9L, but the odds of the missile actually getting to him and pulling in time is pretty much nothing, so I'm going to go for a gunshot. I go full elevator keyboard and manage to kill him. Had that F4J done anything else except fly where he dove down into my nose at, he would have not died right there, and he probably would have been able to kill my buddy in the F-104 because there's really not a whole lot I can be doing to him. My turn rate is too slow, and I just wouldn't have been able to get a weapon off on him. So, big misplay by the F4J, but I'll take it. The 104S-ASA is a big improvement over the S, mainly in the form of countermeasures. I hope that the 9L gets buffed. It really needs a buff in my opinion, which also makes the F-104S-ASA not 11.3 worthy. I think it should be 11.0, but your matchmaker's pretty much going to be the same either way. It's just more of a statement that this plane is equally as capable as, say, the MLD, and that's just not true. Personally, I don't recommend ditching the gun for the radar missiles, but if you really want to, go for it. And if you have the F-104S, then this is definitely worth grinding to get an upgrade for. Hope you don't suffer too much using your F-104S with no countermeasures to grind this at top tier, and I hope I'll see you guys on the next video. I'll see ya.